300,000 young people 24 years and below are HIV positive. 46% of women aged between 15 and 19 have never tested for HIV. 58% of men who are aged between 15 and 19 have also never tested for HIV. There are 48 new infections taking place every day amongst this age group. And as we told you earlier, Kenya has the 4th highest HIV burden globally. Over 40% of all new infections in Kenya are taking place between that age group, 15 to 24 years. And this is what has gotten government and other actors quite concerned about it. So joining me now in studio, Dr. Christine Sadia. She is a gender and policy advisor, but also the national chairperson of the Kenya Medical Women's Association. Right next to me here is Greg Mora. He's a psychologist, and we're going to talk about the behavioral issues around risky sexual activity. And across from me is Job Akuno. He's an adolescent HIV and reproductive health specialist. And welcome to you all. Dr. Let's start with you. Do those figures worry you, and why?
It does, because if you look at those figures and knowing that what the statistics you've even said that Kenya is number 4 globally. If you look at Kenya against the first 3, the population of the first 2 are huge population. Kenya is a very small population compared to the first 3. We're talking about India, Nigeria, and I think there's another one, which is then the big population. If you look at our figures of the number of 300 below the 4 years, vis-a-vis our population, we are actually depleting our productive generation. And what it means moving forward, that the capacity that we are looking for in terms of human resource, in terms of who will be developing our economy, in terms of who is going to regenerate or to get our population to be moving, is already being affected. And in that respect, we are then going to see the people who are supposed to be caring for the elderly are now wanting to be cared for, and that is our worrying statistics.
And this despite breakthrough treatment in dealing with the virus.
Exactly. And looking at that, we have the comfort of saying that you can now live with HIV as a chronic illness. This is still happening because we also have a treatment for prevention, which maybe people are comfortable about. But this productive age group, if you look at even the longevity, even if you give them the ARVs, for how long, their lifespan with the ARVs is going to be devastating. What it means, therefore, that we will have to transit them to the other more potent HIV, the generations of the HIV maybe, and that is going to be a huge cost to this economy, and therefore unsustainable.
Job, you work with young people all the time, and I must say that we did reach out to young people to get them on the program, but perhaps owing to the sensitive nature, many declined to come. Nonetheless, what do you hear from them regarding their reproductive health and why they are engaging in risky sexual behavior?
Yeah, thanks a lot. The conversation with young people has been going on, and I'm glad that a number of young people actually have come forward to engage with the National AIDS Control Council as well as the National AIDS and STI Control Program in terms of the HIV response. And what we've noted from the young people is that we need to understand that we have now the generation of young people who are born with HIV are now in their adolescence and their early 20s. So technically it means that, one, we are talking about those young people who have, all their lives just known, a state of living with HIV. Then two, we are also now talking about those who are acquiring the virus through probably engaging in sexual activity. So from the conversations, of course, when you talk to an ordinary adolescent or young person in the street, there seem to be the fear of getting pregnant, especially among the girls, than they fear HIV. And that's why, there are concerted efforts to actually increase their understanding as well as, comprehensive knowledge of what they know about HIV so that they can begin to appreciate or increase their risk perception.
Greg, that's That's quite an interesting thing to hear, and we've been hearing it a lot lately. But as a psychologist, you know, there are those who say that, you know, we rightfully had to deal with the stigma associated with HIV so that people could come out and get treatment and all of that. And some perhaps fear that inadvertently that has also reduced the communication, if you like, or perception about the real risk with the disease. We started to see people, you know, who are taking their ARVs and appear healthy, and that somehow that interpreted to meaning that it's not that serious.
Yeah.
Would you make that conclusion?
When you look at this particular phenomena, especially with the young people, one of the key things that I look at is the developmental competencies amongst them. Are we giving them real information, tangible information, practical information on human sexuality? Because at the onset of their lives at 12 years, that is when they are born, the second time as men and women. But what is the conversation? How do we talk to them? Because essentially, we can actually ensure that they are able to master themselves. They're able to actually understand who they are and the historical context they are in, and understand issues of human sexuality on a broader spectrum. We'll be able to actually do a lot to them. It has been a challenge also for us to disseminate this particular information, because one of maybe the mindset of our society, there is still stigma. I will tell you for free. When us people, we are counseling those particular young people, some are in the institutions, some are in schools, maybe boarding school. So when in such a situation, they don't want to really come out, because there is still stigma in our society, not understanding. Maybe some of them, like my brother, where he has said, they actually found themselves having gotten HIV, but possibly how we have lived the reality as a society begs question, seeing where we are.
Yeah, Dr. Sadia, let's talk about those youth, the ones who were born with HIV. You know, before that there was a lot of this campaigning around, you know, mother-child transmission. And now, like he's rightly mentioned, they're the ones who are in college, in university. I mean, how are you dealing with it first? And did we fail in our communication with them to help them understand their condition, so that we don't also have such an angry generation out there?
I think mother-to-child PMTCT, or elimination of mother-to-child transmission, if you look at our statistics, we have done very well, because the number of children or infants being born by HIV has gone down. But those who happen to have been born positive, I think that's where lies the big elephant in the room. We talked to the majority of them. The mother will disguise, or the families, because of their own sensitivities, will disguise and will not tell them that they have been born with the condition. And therefore, even when they are being given tablets, they will be told it is for something else.
So it starts with the family
hiding the condition. Then you transit them to school. That is another big elephant in the room. How have we prepared the environment under which they are growing, both at home, in school, and in public spaces to accept them, and even to nurture them, to reinforce what the providers are saying? Because this information is even not available. But even at the health facility levels, you find that there's still a lot of providers that are still stigmatizing mothers who have children with who are positive. So I guess the issue of stigma is real, but how we are going to deal with them as Kenyans, I think, is a conversation that we need to enter very seriously. Why do people continue to violate?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest campaigns that we've had, at least my generation will recall very well, the ABCs, you know, regarding sexual activity. That was such a huge campaign. I mean, at one point we saw the President of the Republic leading the campaign. You have even advertisements on television about using condoms and safe sex and all of that. How is it that even with, you know, in such an age of information, so much information is out there, that perhaps still the message is being missed or not properly communicated or not having impact?
Yeah, thanks. You see, when we talk about HIV awareness, we could comfortably say that almost everyone is aware. But the question is, what exactly do they know about HIV? Because it's one thing to be aware, it's another one to then have the comprehensive knowledge that propels an individual to make appropriate decisions based on that information. And I think you've seen the conversations that are currently going on between the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health to try and provide age-appropriate comprehensive sexuality education to the young people so that it is relayed in a language that they understand. If you look at the older curriculum, for example, what the kids saw about HIV was AIDS kills. But you see now you have this generation of children in school who have lived with HIV. They are not dead, and yet the curriculum over time maintained that kind of tone. So what we are seeing is that while the awareness has been heightened, it's important for us now to try and unpack what is this information that different age groups among the children and adolescents would understand. Two, just like, Doc has talked about the parental information, for example. You see, sometimes we expect the parents to communicate, but the question is, what do the parents themselves know about HIV?
They're equally not informed.
Other than saying, for example, that boys are bad. Now, when you're told boys are bad, probably then men are good, sponsors are better. So we also need to unpack this information when we talk about comprehensive knowledge. Then back it up with practical things that those young people can carry and implement at whatever stage. So when we talk about, for example, challenges around treatment, we need to understand that some of those children were told that they were having certain conditions at that point, and they never got to be told appropriately why they were taking their medication. And some of them got angry even with their parents and caregivers because of lack of that information and communication. And I think those are the areas that now need to be strengthened if we have to make a difference going forward.
Yeah, Greg, I just want to talk about the parenting culture in Kenya. And I think almost everyone watching, if you're from a traditional Kenyan family setting, if you did have that conversation about the birds and the bees with your parents, it was possibly the most awkward thing that ever happened, and it was boys are bad type of conversation. I think, why is it that we appear to struggle so much with sexuality in our context, and how is that affecting young people and what they know?
From what I'm getting from you, the basis of parenting is a relationship. However, due to our historical context, it becomes very, very difficult. That is one. Two, for us to parent, we have to understand the developmental stage of a person. Because if I don't understand what this particular person is undergoing, I will not be able to actually work with this particular person per what they're undergoing. Coming to this particular generation, these are individuals. One, there is a lot of migration. They're transiting from one age group to another, maybe from secondary to colleges. And especially this demography, when you're looking at it, the girls, the people who actually looking at these particular girls, especially the men, are the senior. So the aspect of power. So there goes the question of building capacity to these particular women. As I'm thinking about this particular lady, what is the kind of empowerment should I do to her? Believing in herself, believing in her potential, understanding possibly, yes, I may have been born with HIV, but what is it that I need to do as a person? Because at the end of the day, in case I do anything, I'll be affected. I'm affecting my own country. And the issues of, this particular aspect of HIV has different traces, reinfection. So basically building capacity to these particular individuals to make informed decision. That is one. When we're talking about aspects of sex, how do they negotiate sex? Do they possibly understand it? And what are the intentionality of doing this sex that possibly we are saying? Because at the end of the day, we've said abstinence. What are the practicabilities that our young people need to do in line with that? Use condom. Do they know to use condom well? the other people, be faithful. Are we building capacity for individuals to actually live their reality intensely? I think for me, what is wanting is actually capacity. The day I wanted to become a driver, I went to a driving school. Which school did I go for me to parent my children? To the adolescent and to the young adult.
So there's that gap. Daktari, there was in the time of really empowering girls, when you said you want to empower girls, including to make and women to make responsible decisions. There was economic empowerment, but there was also even with contraception, and one of the tools that came into play was something like the female condom. It was started, to help women feel more in control, more comfortable. The power was in their hands to protect themselves, etc. But even that didn't pick up in Kenya as opposed to other parts of Africa, West Africa, for instance. Why is that?
I think the issue of female condom is a programmatic issue. The cost of a female condom was higher than the male condom. Therefore, access and availability became very difficult. You are talking of the people that already economically are dependent or are less empowered financially. And then you give them a tool which is more expensive, and therefore the government did not invest in the programming of female condom. The West, yes, West Africa invested a lot on social marketing and female condom, whatever. But here it was also laced by myths. The same power control. If you have it, even if a man did not understand, it was not making noise, what we hear that they kept on saying, we are making noise, it's making noise. So there were a lot of myths around, yes, for their own benefit, and this is where the gender dynamics and the gender play comes in. So female condom was laced with a lot of myths and suspicion, and women were discouraged from taking it, from using it. Therefore, if you come from a school of thought that you are so dependent on a man, and in every decision that you do, including because you want them to give you economic empowerment, and you are so dependent, whatever they say, if they say drop it, even if you got it from us free, they will drop it.
Speaking of interventions like the condom, there's been a lot of debate around it and who should be able to access it. At some point, someone saying, these children are having sex. We've tried to warn them against it. They're still doing it. Perhaps it should be accessible in schools. What are your thoughts on that? Because there's another school of thought that says this is a moral issue, that we should be teaching our young people to abstain and to wait, and not sort of sending mixed signals and possibly even facilitating sexual behavior.
Yeah, thanks. I think from a programming perspective, there are two ways to look at it. One is that, service providers and practitioners are equipped to establish whether someone is already sexually active and therefore is at a potential risk, and therefore they are provided with a condom as an option for prevention with adequate information and the demonstration or skills on how to use it. So that becomes important based on the assessments that are necessary. The second part to that is that condom is not the only prevention option that young people are offered. So one, it begins with, making young people know that it is okay to delay, sexual activity. The recognition that young people are sexually active is important, but sexual activity, just like the psychology said, it's not because you're sexually active that you definitely have sex. We actually say that sex is actually a decision that one needs to arrive at, having weighed the consequences of their actions. So that it's not like, oh, fine, if I feel like I want to have sex, then the next thing that I need to do is to look for a condom. Because there is also the part where they are informed about the beauty of delaying, engaging in sexual activity. And when the decision then comes that they are supposed to get the condoms, then they need to be given adequate information about condom use so that they can be able to use it appropriately, consistently for prevention. But of course, we're also saying that now, depending on risks, that for some young people who are at elevated risk, other options have been brought into the equation, including pre-exposure prophylaxis and the like, that are also part of the menu. So it's important for us to then know that within this menu of our prevention, we need to ensure that the young people have adequate information, and that then they make decisions based on the information that is provided. And
concerned that pills like those are being abused as well by young people. Greg, are we burying our heads in the sand about this? And, you know, you have statistics saying that, you know, 20% of children are engaging in sex in Kenya before the age of 15.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Since there are different, possibly, mindsets that really exist in our society, and depending on where you come from, that is what you represent. However, this is a reality. There are three things that possibly we need to factor in. In a sexual activity, there is a thought process that comes into it. Are we really empowering our people to actually connect the cause and the effect? Because essentially, when our aspect of possibly intervention is a different aspect. But am I building your capacity to actually connect the cause and the effect? Because essentially, as a psychologist, I know at this particular point, the competence that is gotten at this particular stage, we call it abstract. When I connect the cause and the effect, are we really building them in terms of understanding this is it, this is how individuals have lived it? Because yes, we have individuals who have come out as they say, it's a reality, I was born with HIV, I'm not bitter, and this is how I'm living my experience, and this is how I am protecting my own brothers and sisters. That is one. The second thing is my feelings, the emotions. What we are saying that possibly I was born with it, I'm actually at this particular point, I'm young. Are we really making them understand, feel whatever this particular aspect involved? Yes, sex is there, but when I can connect with individuals who are saying, actually, I have the responsibility to actually put this pandemic at bay because I understand the effect that it has. This is a point of awareness. This is a point of knowledge. And the actions, what are we providing them with? What are the options are we consulting them? Or we are sitting in our offices, we are sitting in those particular meetings and saying that possibly our young people, what we need to do interventions.
Coming
are
with
we
policy
going to
without them at the table.
Thank you. Because when you engage them, they'll actually give us a very nice platform and reasons and better ways to actually handle it, rather than us people really purporting and proposing to them what they should be doing.
Dr. Sadia, let's just quickly talk about the misuse of PrEP and also morning after pills. And one wonders because, you know, you'll hear people even faking what happened to go to hospital and get PrEP, or you know, you'll have girls just buying, you know, morning afters over the counter, and yet the same, you know, you could get a condom at much cheaper. What is going on there, and what are the risk factors, you know, with that misuse of these interventions?
I think one that we want to address is the generation. We have talked about the lack of comprehensive knowledge. He has also talked about how do you perceive your risk and how do you factor the effect. So if we have a society that perhaps is an afterthought. You see, if you look at those interventions, they're interventions that are supposed to help you because either you are at heightened risk or you have already done something which you have prevented the morning after. So what he was saying, the thought process, have we built, like for example, gas, the inner urgency to resist doing something so that you become delivered, so that you use the PrEP because you have done 1, 2, 3 sets of things and you found that you cannot move to the other menu. Therefore, we have a smaller group of people that perhaps we are looking for because their risk is very heightened. But we have a group of society as a society, and we don't blame the young people. Perhaps the role modeling and what you're saying, he was saying that you don't go to school for parenting. But I don't think even my mother went to school for parenting, but we were parented. So I think the issue of parenting and the knowledge around parenting and knowing how to parent at this particular age and this particular season where the social media is there, where the agency, the parents are out there, they are not with their children, somebody else is socializing our children and giving them information, where we need to be more aware that our children are becoming smarter at a very young age. The statistics, again, that is on the table is that girls get HIV 5 to 7 years before their boys' age group. This is scientific. This has been proven.
Girls get HIV 5 to 7 years earlier than
the boys. And that, with that information, you cannot program.
Is that because they're having sex earlier?
And even with an elder,
and with older
people, or a mix of older. But what are the issues? If you do multivariate analysis or bivariate analysis, it tells us the environment under which, if before you had one individual with HIV, the dynamics, the household dynamics are changed. And perhaps the boys are sort of like threatened, they will not get into risky behavior. The girls, because of the social, so poverty plays in, age plays in, and there are many factors. And I think as programmers, we have not used the evidence that is becoming on behavioral studies and what also becomes on what we are seeing to make effect to our actions, because if girls are becoming sexually active and getting to HIV pool at an early age, you cannot give a common information at the same age, so calling it peer education. Peer for the boys and girls at the same time. Well, I know that the risk of the girls are much more. So you need to reach the girls much earlier. Are we doing this? So I think, like what you're saying, that when even we are asking that the morning after pill is available and PrEP is available, we need to factor the environmental issues.
Well, finally, it's being viewed very much as a crisis for the reasons that you gave at the start of the program, and more environmental issues, including peer pressure, the desire for, sort of lifestyle, is really exacerbating the issue. So what is the way forward? How do we reach young people? Let's start with you because you work with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thread coming through from the conversations is really have the young people at the table in terms of designing programs with them, work with them in terms of the implementation, and even work with them in terms of looking at the results that are coming out of those interventions that you're doing with the young people. But again, it's important that, all the other actors become aware of the needs of young people that are unique when you compare them in terms of how they need their services. So, for example, we talk about adolescents and young people friendly services, because then if the providers, those attitudes of providers that stop young people from going to the facility, if they become friendlier, if they build more, if they improve on their relationship with the young people are likely to go to the facilities to seek for services. If they get non-judgmental providers, they are more likely to discuss other issues that are affecting them that could also be leading to other risks. So we need to have a point where the service delivery considers, the unique needs of young people. The programmers work and listen to the young people and work with them, but also then identifying young people who themselves become champions for some of those desired behavior that we are talking about. Because when we want to create a new norm, then we must also have a number of young people who are actually part of creating that new norm.
Absolutely.
The way forward is actually one in the educational institutions that we are in. We really need to actually build capacity for these particular individuals. Can they locate themselves historically? Where am I? What is this that I'm undergoing? Because not necessarily teaching me, yes, everybody knows HIV and AIDS, what it does and everything. But are we really doing it in a way that they are able to deal with it, especially the girls and the boys, like what Dr. has said. I'm looking at a girl who is actually transiting from secondary to maybe university or a tertiary institution. What is this girl, what are the risk factors that this girl is exposed to? Do we really help her to actually connect with them and possibly start making decisions, maybe delaying gratification and what have you. So that is an institution.
Wow. Delaying gratification.
Delaying gratification.
In the microwave generation.
Yes. For me, it's a factor because some have.
Yeah.
Another thing is programs. Our young people are very creative. Our young people have energy because what they have pushed at the forefront is actually, like name it, the social media. They are actually the people using it. If possibly we can come up with programs, involve them from the formation to the end and how it can be user-friendly, believe you me, we'll be doing great justice to ourselves, to the society, and to everyone involved. So programs, building their capacity, and possibly having institutions, as he has said, that are friendly. You know, if it is a university, it's a tertiary institution.
People they can talk to and not be judged.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr.
I think that they've said part of it, but another part of it that needs to be said, we need to breathe and take back what works, what used to work, and what did we learn. And I think for me, who has been in this field since 1984, when the first HIV case was identified in this country, I think there are some things that we have dropped. The red started that has been dropped. One, the intensity that used to be there in prevention programs is lost. Reaching out of school, a mix of people meeting the town, the people in urban and rural, they are very different. And I think for me, it goes back to programming and evidence that we have on the table. We have a lot of great reasons, but we are not using them to inform the decision and the program. As much as I want to agree that the young people need to also be on the table while we are discussing, some of the interventions that I see left with young people alone without guidance are actually not helpful. So it is a mix. They are on the table, but they need to be guided by what works, evidence, and what are the real issues that we need to discuss. So that even as they inform that, there's an adult who's a mentor who says that is a no-go zone. Social media is already taken, but it is misused also to lure people. And in fact, therein lies some of the myths and the dangers.